The moment Emily Walker entered the 53rd floor carrying a sushi delivery, wearing her worn windbreaker and scuffed sneakers, security immediately intercepted her. "You need to leave. This floor is reserved for senior management," an assistant declared icily while others snickered around her. "She must think this is some kind of food court," someone remarked. When Emily respectfully explained, "I have a direct delivery for Mr. Thompson," the entire room burst into mocking laughter. At that precise moment, the door opened and the CEO emerged, stating matter-of-factly, "The order is mine. Thank you, Emily." None of them realized they had just ridiculed a brilliant linguist who had previously declined an opportunity with the United Nations. There stood Emily, the warm sushi container in her grasp, her chestnut hair escaping from a casual ponytail. She remained composed under their contemptuous stares, her expression serene, her gaze unwavering, as if their brand of cruelty was familiar territory. The assistant, a lean man with his hair slicked back and wearing an expensive suit that reeked of privilege, sneered. "Fine, whatever. Give it here," he said, extending his hand as though he were doing her a charitable favor. Emily handed over the package with a subtle nod, her fingertips grazing the wrinkled receipt attached to the top. No words escaped her lips. None were necessary. The way she repositioned her backpack and the soft squeak of her sneakers against the polished marble communicated more than any retort ever could. A momentary hush fell over the room, though it was short-lived. "What does she think she's doing?" hissed a woman adorned with pearls, her tone arctic and sharp. "Acting like she has any business being here while delivering takeout," another person added, their artificial smile barely concealing their contempt. A junior executive with a slightly asked, "Wabu Tai and an ego vastly exceeding his stature," whispered conspiratorially to the security guard, "Search her bag. She's probably planning to steal something." The guard, a heavy-set man with a disinterested expression, moved closer, his hand lingering near Emily's backpack. "Let me see inside," he commanded, his voice monotone yet audible to everyone present. Emily hesitated briefly, her grip tightening on the strap for an instant before she slowly unzipped it, revealing a water bottle, a weathered notebook, and a city map folded neatly. The executive scoffed dismissively. "What's this? Mapping out your route to a real career?" Harsh laughter erupted throughout the room. Another voice chimed in mockingly, "Perhaps she's carrying a resume written with crayons." Emily zipped the bag closed, her movements intentional, her eyes briefly meeting the guard's, not with fear but with a quiet intensity that caused him to retreat. She remained silent, simply standing there, allowing their ridicule to wash over her like waves she had long since learned to endure. The boardroom door remained partially open, and Emily detected the murmur of voices within. Crisp English, a burst of Mandarin, followed by an uncomfortable pause. She shifted her stance, preparing to return to the elevator when she noticed a tall woman in a crimson blazer pacing frantically, phone pressed against her ear. "Where is our translator?" "Time is running out," the woman hissed, panic evident in her voice. 3 Chinese clients in impeccably tailored suits occupied the conference table, their expressions unreadable while their fingers tapped restlessly. Emily lingered momentarily. Her task was complete. She had no reason to remain, yet the room pulsed with tension like a wire stretched to its breaking point. Something about the atmosphere held her there, if only for a moment. As Emily turned to depart, a woman with glossy lipstick and a designer scarf blocked her exit, clutching a stack of documents. "Since you're still here, make yourself productive," she commanded, forcing the papers into Emily's hands. "Make 10 copies, double-sided, and don't screw it up." Her tone was patronizing, as if addressing a child. The room tittered, and someone muttered, "She'll probably break the copier." Emily examined the papers with steady hands and replied quietly, "I'm only here for food delivery." The woman's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Oh, spare me. You're taking up space. Either handle this or leave." The mockery intensified, and a man in the corner smirked. Maybe she can't even understand the directions. Emily placed the documents on a nearby table with slow, deliberate precision and turned back toward the elevator. The woman scoffed. Predictable. Can't even manage a basic request. The room's derision pursued her, each comment a calculated insult. Yet Emily's pace remained steady, her silence more powerful than their noise. "You there!" the woman in the crimson blazer called out sharply, spotting Emily near the entrance. "Still lingering? This isn't entertainment. Get out!" Her words cut deep, prompting a few snickers. Emily didn't flinch. She looked directly at the woman with calm composure and offered softly, "Would you like assistance? I've studied Mandarin." The room went completely still. Then came the laughter, louder and more vicious than before. A man in a pinstriped suit, his cufflinks gleaming under the fluorescent lighting, leaned back in his chair. "You want to sit down and translate? What qualifications do you possess?" he asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. The pearl-wearing woman joined in. "She probably just translates restaurant menus." The room devoured this comment eagerly. "Social media is destroying civilization," another voice added, and the chuckling spread like wildfire. Just as the laughter reached its peak, one of the Chinese client tapped his pen against the table, his attention fixed on Emily. He spoke rapidly in Mandarin, directing his question not to the room but specifically to her, inquiring about a particular contract clause. The room fell silent, anticipating her failure. Emily nodded slightly, her fingers brushing her backpack's edge, and responded in flawless Mandarin, her voice clear and confident. She didn't merely translate. She clarified the clause's implications while referencing a trade regulation from memory. The client raised his eyebrows and exchanged meaningful glances with his colleagues, who nodded with approval. The pinstriped suitman's smirk vanished, his cufflinks no longer gleaming with arrogance. The crimson blazer woman's phone nearly slipped from her grasp, her face draining of color. Emily concluded her response, her eyes briefly meeting the client's before returning to her composed, neutral posture. The room could no longer laugh. It was impossible now. Emily stood there with her windbreaker zipped to her chin, hands relaxed at her sides. "I could help," she offered, her voice level as if she were simply offering to hold a door open. The woman in crimson scoffed, but one of the Chinese clients raised his hand and spoke quickly with sharp urgency, silencing the room once more. Mr. Thompson, the CEO, a broad-shouldered man with graying hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, stepped forward. "He's requesting immediate contract clarification," he announced, scanning the room. "Our official translator remains absent." Emily moved closer. "I can handle it," she stated, not loudly or aggressively, just with certainty. The pinstriped suitman snorted derisively. "This should be entertaining," he muttered loud enough for all to hear. Emily paid him no attention. She approached the table, pulled out a chair, and sat down. The Chinese client began speaking rapidly with precision. Emily listened intently, her head tilted slightly, fingers resting on the receipt still tucked in her pocket. Then she began speaking. Her Mandarin was flawless, clear, confident, every tone pitch perfect. She translated 3 financial clauses in under 60 seconds, not simply repeating words but explaining legal subtleties as if she had drafted the contract personally. The Chinese clients leaned forward, nodding approvingly. One even smiled, a rare break in his stoic facade. A senior manager with an oily, artificially polite voice leaned forward and declared, "How charming. But let's not waste valuable time. You lack the qualifications to be here." He gestured dismissively at her windbreaker, his lip curling with disgust. "Go fetch coffee for us. Black, no sugar." The room exploded with harsh, relentless laughter. Someone else added, "Hurry up or you'll be late for your next delivery." Emily's fingers paused on the table, her eyes flicking briefly to the manager. She spoke no words, simply rose from her chair with a soft scraping sound and walked toward the exit. The manager called after her, "Don't forget cream for mine." The laughter grew more intense, each chuckle a deliberate twist of cruelty. But as Emily reached the doorway, she stopped, turned, and fixed him with a look. Not angry, but possessing a quiet, piercing calm that made his smirk waver. The room's laughter died momentarily before they attempted to recover. The room had gone silent, but it wasn't a comfortable quiet. It was the kind that occurs when people are too stunned to speak, yet too proud to acknowledge their error. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. "You studied commercial law?" he inquired, his voice mixing surprise with curiosity. Emily shook her head. "No, just languages. I read during my spare time," she said, as if it were nothing extraordinary, as if she hadn't just rescued a $500 Ilion deal from collapse. The crimson blazer woman stared at her, phone still clutched tightly, mouth agape. The pinstriped suit man shifted uncomfortably, his cufflinks suddenly seeming too ostentatious, too bright. The meeting continued, but the atmosphere had fundamentally shifted. Emily remained at Mr. Thompson's request, though the looks she received weren't grateful. They were sharp and suspicious, as if she had performed some elaborate trick. The pearl-wearing woman leaned toward her neighbor and whispered, "She probably researched everything beforehand." The man nodded, his lips forming a smirk. Another assistant, a young woman with a tight bun and clipboard, spoke up challengingly. "Do you speak German? The third party requires it," her tone daring Emily to fail. The room chuckled again, softer, but equally cruel. "She handled Chinese, now she wants to play genius," someone muttered. As the German client began speaking, the clipboard woman slid a pen and notepad toward Emily, her smile venomous. "Take notes, delivery girl. Perhaps you'll learn something." The room snickered, and someone whispered, "She'll probably doodle food items." Emily picked up the pen with steady fingers and began writing. Not simple notes, but a precise translation of the German client's words, her handwriting neat and swift. When the client paused, Emily returned the notepad, her translation complete, including a footnote explaining a legal term's etymology. The clipboard woman's smile froze as she read, her fingers trembling slightly. The German client glanced at the page, her eyes widening, and she murmured something to Mr. Thompson, who nodded slowly. The room's laughter ceased, replaced by tense, uncomfortable silence. Emily didn't acknowledge the clipboard woman, simply folded her hands while her windbreaker rustled softly, and waited. A lawyer from the European firm, an Saad, Hinman with wire-rimmed glasses and a permanent scowl, slid a contract section across the table. It was written in German with a classical Latin section, dense and obscure, designed to intimidate. "Proceed," he said dryly. "Explain this." Emily lifted the paper with steady hands, scanning it briefly, her eyes moving quickly across the lines. Then she smiled subtly and began speaking. Her German flowed as smoothly as her Mandarin, every word crisp, every phrase clear. When she reached the Latin section, she didn't just translate. She explained root meanings, connecting them to historical treaties as if teaching a class. "It derives from the Treaty of Westphalia, 1648, she said, setting the paper down gently. During a brief meeting intermission, a junior associate with perfectly gelled hair pulled out his phone, pretending to take a selfie while obviously filming Emily. "Smile, delivery girl. This will go viral. Courier crashes corporate," he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. Laughter erupted immediately, cruel and unrestrained. Someone else chimed in, "Tag it, epic fail." Emily's eyes flicked to the phone, her expression unchanged, though her fingers briefly tightened on the table's edge. She didn't speak, simply stood, picked up her backpack, and walked toward the door with measured steps. As she passed the associate, she paused, looked directly at him, and said softly, You might want to review your company's media policy. His grin vanished instantly, his phone lowering as the room's laughter transformed into awkward coughing. Nobody had expected her to know company policy or to call him out with such quiet precision. The lawyer's frown deepened, not because she was wrong. He couldn't argue because she wasn't. The German client, a woman with short silver hair and a no-nonsense stare, nodded slowly. I wasn't even aware of that root meaning, she admitted quietly. The room fell completely silent. Mr. Thompson looked at his assistant, a nervous man with a tablet, and said, Add her to our potential advisors list. Emily didn't react, simply folded her hands in her lap while her windbreaker rustled faintly. The pearl-wearing woman stared at her, fake smile gone, fingers twisting her pearls as if they might break. As the meeting concluded, a consultant with a loud tie and even louder voice handed Emily a business card, not his own, but a blank one from the table. Write your name on it, sweetheart, he said patronizingly. Maybe we'll contact you for the next food delivery. The room laughed sharply and meanly. He tossed a pen at her, which skittered across the table, stopping just short of the edge. Emily picked it up slowly and wrote her name in clear, deliberate strokes. Then she slid the card back, her eyes meeting his briefly. Keep it, she said, her voice soft but firm. You might need it later. The consultant's laugh caught in his throat, and the room's mockery faltered, uncertain of her words' meaning but feeling their significance. Emily stood with her backpack over one shoulder and walked out, leaving the card behind like a quiet promise. But the cruelty persisted. It always does when people feel diminished and want to diminish others. A senior employee with a booming voice and a light-catching Rolex leaned forward. If you're truly that skilled, he said mockingly, interpret tonight's gala in 6 languages. He issued it like a challenge, daring her to crash spectacularly. The room lit up with smirks. A delivery girl on stage. That's rich, the clipboard woman said, laughing. Another voice from a corner office suit added, One mistake and the entire deal collapses. They expected her to retreat. They wanted her to. Emily looked at the Rolex-wearing man with calm eyes and said, I accept. The gala took place that evening in a ballroom atop the Crystal Finance Tower. The room glowed with warm golden light from chandeliers, tables draped in white linen sparkling throughout. Miley entered still wearing her windbreaker and jeans, her sneakers silent on the carpet. People stared openly. A woman in a sequined gown whispered to her companion, Is she lost? A man holding champagne chuckled. Must be delivering the appetizers. Emily ignored them completely, walking to the stage where a microphone awaited and taking her position. The room buzzed with curiosity, but it wasn't kind. It was the anticipatory buzz before a spectacle, when people await someone's failure. Before speeches began, a tech assistant adjusting the microphone smirked at Emily and said, Don't trip over the cord, kid. This isn't your delivery route. The nearby crowd laughed, their champagne glasses clinking as they leaned in to watch her squirm. Emily didn't respond, simply stepped forward, tested the microphone with a gentle tap, and looked out at the room. Her gaze landed on the assistant momentarily, not with anger, but with quiet steadiness that made him fumble with his equipment. Then, without a word, she began speaking in French, introducing the first speaker with warmth and clarity that silenced the crowd. The assistant's smirk vanished, his hands frozen on the soundboard as the room's attention shifted entirely to her. She needed no other words. Her voice was sufficient. The gala commenced and speeches began. Representatives from 6 nations, France, Spain, Japan, Russia, Germany, and China, rose one by one, delivering well wishes and toasts. Emily listened with hands clasped before her, face serene. Then she spoke. Her French was warm, her Spanish fluid, her Japanese precise. She moved through Russian, German, and Chinese without hesitation, her voice steady, translations perfect. Each time she completed a segment, the crowd applauded, not just politely, but with genuine awe. By the time she delivered the final speech, a 6-language finale weaving every culture together, the room was on its feet in a standing ovation. The chandeliers seemed to glow more brilliantly. Midway through the gala, a Japanese representative approached Emily during a break, bowing slightly and asking in hesitant English about a cultural reference she had woven into her translation. Before she could respond, the Rolex-wearing man interrupted loudly. "Don't bother her, she's just the help," he said, laughing. The nearby crowd joined in with sharp, dismissive chuckles. Emily paused, her fingers brushing her jean's edge, then responded in fluent Japanese, explaining the reference with depth that left the representative beaming. She added a polite bow, her movements graceful, and the Rolex man's laughter died in his throat. The representative shook her hand, completely ignoring the man, and the crowd's laughter turned to surprised murmurs. Emily's eyes met the Rolex man's for a split second, her calm unshaken, before she turned back to the stage. Mr. Thompson stepped onto the stage, his face radiant. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying over the crowd, "meet our new communications advisor." Emily smiled just slightly, her brown hair catching the spotlight. She didn't bask in it. She had no need to. The room had transformed. The sequined gown woman looked away, her champagne flute forgotten. The Rolex man stared at his shoes. The pearl-wearing woman had departed early, someone later reported. Emily stepped off the stage, her sneakers quiet, windbreaker still zipped. She didn't look back. As Emily left the stage, a French diplomat approached her, his voice low and respectful, asking if she had ever worked with the United Nations. Before she could answer, the junior associate with gelled hair snickered nearby. "She's probably never even left the city." The surrounding crowd laughed with sharp, biting mockery. Emily paused with her backpack slung over one shoulder and turned to the diplomat. In flawless French, she explained that she had declined a UN offer to pursue other paths, her tone humble, yet clear. The diplomat's eyes widened and he handed her his card, saying, "We need people like you." The associate's phone slipped from his hand, clattering to the floor as the crowd's laughter turned to stunned silence. Emily tucked the card into her pocket and walked away, her step steady, her silence deafening. The next day, consequences began unfolding. The assistant with the slicked back hair was terminated after someone discovered his emails mocking the Chinese clients. Mr. Thompson didn't hesitate. The pearl-wearing woman's company lost major sponsorship when her name became tied to a viral post about the gala, and her clients disliked the optics. The clipboard woman was dropped by her social circle after her delivery girl comment circulated. None of it was dramatic. No big scenes or shouting matches, just reality catching up as it always does. Emily said nothing about it. She didn't need to. Her silence spoke louder than anything they could have said. A week later, Emily was back at the tower in a small office on the 53rd floor. Not a corner office, nothing flashy, just a desk, chair, and window with a city view. She was reviewing contracts, her windbreaker draped over the chair. The door opened and a man entered, tall, quiet, his suit simple but sharp. He didn't say much, just nodded at her. "Ready for the next meeting?" he asked. Emily looked up, her eyes steady. "Always," she replied. The room felt different with his presence. Nobody mocked her anymore. Nobody dared. Her husband's presence didn't demand respect. It commanded it. They walked out together, Emily's steps steady, backpack slung over one shoulder. The hallway was quiet, but whispers followed. Not cruel ones anymore, just questions. "Who is she really?" someone murmured. "How did we miss that?" another asked. Emily didn't answer. She didn't need to. She'd been judged her entire life by Achid, her clothes, her job, her silence. They'd seen what they wanted to see, but now the truth was clear and permanent. Emily's past wasn't a story she shared, but it had shaped her. She'd grown up in a world of wealth, marble staircases, private tutors, her family's name on buildings. But it was a cold world where her parents' love came with conditions, their expectations forming a cage. She had walked away, choosing a small apartment and courier work over boardrooms and banquets. The discipline remained with her in how she moved, how she listened. She didn't need their approval. She never had. That day in the boardroom before the gala, there had been a moment nobody noticed. Emily had glanced at a wall photograph, a black and white shot of the city skyline taken decades ago. It reminded her of a car ride with her father years back when he had pointed out that same skyline and said, "This belongs to us, Emily. Never forget that." She had been 16, hands folded in her lap, heart heavy with his words' weight. She hadn't wanted it then or now, but the memory stung, and for a second her fingers tightened on the receipt in her pocket. Then she released it, her face calm again, eyes back on the room. The humiliation in that boardroom had been relentless. After her Mandarin translation, the pinstriped suit man had leaned forward, his voice low but cutting. "Impressive," he said, "but anyone can memorize a few lines." The room tittered, feeding off his smugness. Emily didn't respond, simply looked at him with steady eyes until he shifted uncomfortably and looked away. The crimson blazer woman, still clutching her phone, tried to regain control. "Let's proceed," she said sharply. But the Chinese client spoke again, requesting clarification on a clause. Emily answered before anyone could stop her, her Mandarin smoother, explanation clearer. The client nodded, satisfied. The room didn't laugh that time. Later, when the German contract appeared, the wire-rimmed glasses lawyer had watched her closely, his pen tapping the table. He'd expected her to stumble. When she didn't, when she explained Latin roots with scholarly ease, he pushed his glasses up and stared at her like he was trying to decipher what she was hiding. Emily didn't meet his gaze. She didn't need to. She set the contract down and folded her hands, windbreaker rustling softly. The German client, the silver-haired woman, had glanced at her with something resembling respect. It was small, but present. Emily saw it, but didn't smile, simply waited for the next question. The gala invitation had been their final blow, or so they believed. The Rolex man had said it with such confidence, like setting an inescapable trap. 6 languages, he'd repeated, his voice booming. "Let's see you handle that." The clipboard woman had laughed, her tight bun bobbing. "She'll choke," she whispered to her neighbor. Emily had stood there with her backpack over one shoulder, sneakers planted firmly on the floor. "I accept," she'd said, and the room had quieted. Not because they believed her, but because they couldn't wait to watch her fail. That night, walking into the ballroom, Emily felt every stare's weight. The sequined gown woman with red-painted lips leaned toward her friend and whispered, "Who let her in?" The champagne-holding man raised his glass with a carrying chuckle. Emily kept walking, not looking at them. She didn't need to. Her steps were steady, shoulders relaxed. She'd been here before, not in this ballroom, but in similar rooms where people judged before she could speak. She'd learned long ago that their words didn't define her. Her actions did. On stage, the microphone felt cold in her hand, but her voice was warm. She listened to each speaker with focused eyes and steady breathing. When she slated, she didn't just repeat words. She brought them to life. Her French was lyrical, Spanish vibrant, Japanese precise. The crowd leaned forward, skepticism fading with every sentence. By the Russian segment, the room was hers. The German client, the silver-haired woman, clapped first with steady, deliberate hands. The Chinese client followed, then the entire room. Emily didn't smile, just nodded, a small gesture, and moved to the next language. The final speech was most challenging, not just translation but interpretation, weaving 6 cultures into one unity message. Emily paused momentarily, fingers tightening on the microphone. She thought of her mother years ago, teaching her French at the kitchen table, voice soft but firm. "Words are power, Emily," she'd said. "Use them well." Emily had been 10, hair in braids, heart full of dreams. The memory flashed and faded, and Emily spoke with clear, strong voice, every word perfect. When she finished, the room erupted. The standing ovation wasn't just for her skill, but for her presence, her quiet strength. Mr. Thompson's announcement came like thunder. "Our new communications advisor," he said, and the room shifted. The sequined gown woman set her glass down, face pale. The Rolex man stared at the floor, confidence gone. The pearl-wearing woman had slipped out, unable to face the truth. Emily stepped off stage, sneakers silent, windbreaker catching the light. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. The room had seen her, really seen her, for the first time. The fallout came quickly. The slicked-back hair assistant was gone by morning, his emails exposed in a company-wide memo. The pearl-wearing woman's sponsorship deal collapsed after a viral post quoted her takeout menu jab. The clipboard woman's friends stopped inviting her to brunches, reputation tainted by her own words. It wasn't revenge, just the world turning, truth catching up. Emily didn't comment, she didn't need to. Her silence was her strength, dignity, her shield. After the meeting, the silver-haired German client approached her. "You're not what I expected," she said bluntly, but not unkindly. Emily smiled slightly. "I hear that often," she replied. The woman nodded like she understood more than she revealed and walked away. Emily watched her go, fingers brushing her backpack's edge. Moments like that, small, unspoken, were why she stayed. Not for the title or office, but for the chance to be seen for who she was, not what she wore. You've been there, haven't you? Judged without reason, dismissed before you could speak. It hurts, but you're still here, still standing. You're not alone. Emily's story isn't just hers, it's yours too. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below and hit follow to walk with me through heartbreak, betrayal, and finally healing.